Picture a night, tens of thousands of years ago, somewhere in the middle of an ice age. No walls, no fire yet, no clothing thick enough to matter. The temperature outside is low enough to kill a human being in a matter of hours. And yet, somehow, that human survived, and their children survived, and their children's children kept surviving, for generation after generation, through winters that should have wiped an entire species off the planet. So how did humans, a species with almost no natural fur, no thick layer of fat, nothing built in to handle real cold, actually make it through winter, long before radiators, heaters, or central heating ever existed? The real answer isn't one invention. It's a chain of them, each one solving a failure in the one before it. And it starts with a discovery that almost feels too simple to matter. Fire. Not fire the idea, fire the accident. Lightning strikes, wildfires, volcanic activity. Early humans didn't invent fire, they encountered it. What actually mattered was the next step, the one almost no other species ever managed. Humans learned to keep it. Carrying a burning branch, feeding it, protecting it from rain and wind. A controlled flame meant something no animal on the planet had, a portable source of heat that didn't depend on the sun. But here's the problem hiding inside that solution: fire needs fuel. Fuel runs out, and in the middle of a snowstorm, at 2 in the morning, a fire left untended for even an hour could mean freezing to death in your sleep. So fire alone wasn't enough. Humans needed a second layer of defense, something that could hold heat even when the flames died down. And that answer came from the animals around them. Early humans began wearing animal hides, not just draped over the shoulders, but actually shaped and tied around the body. Archaeological evidence, tiny-eyed sewing needles found at sites tens of thousands of years old, tells us something remarkable. Humans weren't just wrapping themselves in skins. They were sewing fitted clothing, tailored enough to trap body heat close to the skin instead of letting it escape. This single invention, the sewing needle, might be one of the most underrated survival tools in human history. But clothing solved the body. It didn't solve the space around the body, and that space was still, brutally, exposed to the cold. So the next problem became shelter, and this is where things start splitting in a direction you wouldn't expect. Different environments forced completely different solutions, and almost none of them looked anything alike. In the Arctic, among Inuit communities, the answer was ice itself, turned into a weapon against the cold. The igloo wasn't just a block shelter. Compacted snow is actually an excellent insulator, trapping pockets of air that slow heat loss dramatically. Inside, body heat alone, from just a few people in a small oil lamp, could raise the internal temperature by dozens of degrees compared to outside. The very material that was killing people outside became the thing protecting them inside. Meanwhile, across the grasslands of Central Asia, Mongolian communities built something entirely different: the yurt, a round felt tent designed to be taken apart and moved with the seasons. Thick layers of wool felt trapped heat efficiently, while the round shape reduced surface area exposed to wind, and a central hearth inside let smoke escape through a hole at the very top. In colder parts of Scandinavia and Iceland, where wood was scarce, people built turf houses, homes with walls and roofs made from layered soil and grass. It sounds primitive. It wasn't. Turf is a remarkably effective insulator, and these structures kept interior temperatures noticeably warmer than the freezing air outside, using a material that was, quite literally, free and everywhere. And in parts of North America, indigenous communities built winter longhouses and earth lodges, some partially dug into the ground itself, using the earth's natural insulation the same way a root cellar keeps vegetables from freezing. For completely different environments, for completely different building materials, all solving the exact same core problem: trap heat, block wind, and don't rely on fire alone. But shelter and clothing only solved part of the equation. There was a third factor almost nobody thinks about today: food. Winter meant something modern humans rarely experience: real caloric scarcity combined with a biological need for more energy just to stay warm. The human body burns significantly more calories generating heat in cold conditions. So communities developed deliberate survival strategies around this, not by accident, but through repeated seasonal experience. Preserving meat and fish through smoking and drying. Storing fat-rich foods specifically because fat provided far more usable energy per bite than lean meat. In some Arctic communities, whale and seal blubber wasn't just food, it was practically a heating fuel for the human body itself, converted directly into warmth from the inside out. Getting through winter wasn't just about staying warm. It was about eating in a way that manufactured warmth internally, long before anyone understood the actual biology behind it. Now here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. As humans began settling into permanent villages instead of moving seasonally, a brand new problem appeared, one that fire pits alone couldn't solve anymore. Smoke. An open fire inside an enclosed home filled the air with smoke, damaging lungs and eyes over years of exposure. Humans needed heat without poisoning the very air they were breathing. The Romans came up with a genuinely advanced answer, centuries ahead of its time. The hypocaust, an underfloor heating system where a furnace generated hot air that circulated beneath raised floors and through hollow walls, warming entire rooms evenly without a single open flame inside the living space. Wealthy Roman homes and public bathhouses used this system extensively, and in some ways, it wasn't fully matched again for well over 1,000 years. In East Asia, a strikingly similar idea developed completely independently. In Korea, the Ondol system channeled heat from a cooking fire underneath stone floors, warming an entire home through the ground itself. In Japan, a different but related solution emerged, the kotatsu, a low table with a heat source underneath, covered by a blanket that trapped warmth around anyone sitting close to it. Two regions, no direct connection, both arriving at the same core idea: heat the floor or the space directly around the body, not the entire open air of a room. But in medieval Europe, for a long stretch of time, homes actually regressed. Simple open hearths, smoke escaping through holes in the roof or gaps in the walls. This was standard for centuries, even after far more advanced systems had already existed elsewhere in the world. Then came the invention that quietly changed everything, one most people barely think about today: the chimney. A properly built chimney did something remarkably simple but transformative. It pulled smoke directly out of a home while keeping the fire's heat inside. This single structural change allowed fireplaces to move from the center of one open room into actual walls, meaning homes could finally be divided into multiple separate, heatable spaces instead of one smoky shared room. It sounds like a small architectural detail. It fundamentally reshaped how homes, and eventually entire cities, were built. As cities grew larger and more crowded, another shift happened, one driven by a very different kind of pressure, running out of wood. In parts of Europe, deforestation from centuries of heavy fuel use pushed people toward a new heat source pulled straight out of the ground: coal. Coal burned hotter and longer than wood, and it powered something wood never could at scale: the stove. Enclosed metal stoves controlled airflow far more precisely than an open fireplace, meaning far less fuel wasted and far more heat actually retained inside a room instead of escaping straight up a chimney. For the first time, heating a home became noticeably more efficient, not just bigger. And this set the stage for the final turning point, the one that made heating something you never even have to think about: centralized heating. In the 1800s, steam and hot water heating systems began circulating warmth through pipes into multiple rooms from a single source. No separate fire needed in every room anymore. This evolved further into the furnace and radiator systems that spread rapidly through the 20th century, and eventually into the thermostats and forced air central heating most homes rely on today, adjusting temperature automatically, with a single touch, without anyone chopping wood, tending flames, or checking if a fire has gone out overnight. Stop and compare these two realities for a second. An early human huddled inside an ice shelter, wrapped in stitched hides, feeding a fire by hand every few hours, terrified of what would happen if it went out while they slept. Today, you adjust a number on a wall, and an entire house responds automatically: no flame, no smoke, no fear. The core problem never changed across that entire span of time. Cold kills. What changed was every single layer humans built between themselves and that cold: fire, clothing, shelter, food, airflow, fuel, until the threat that once ended lives quietly became something solved before you even notice you're cold at all. Maybe that's the real thread running through this entire story. Winter never stopped being dangerous. Humans just kept getting better at making sure they never had to feel that danger directly again. If you found it interesting how something as basic as staying warm took fire, animal hides, ice houses, underground floors, and finally an entire hidden network of pipes to fully solve, watch the next video, where we trace how humans went from carrying water by hand to indoor plumbing.